All right, hello? Are we still good? Okay, I am going to begin lecture 6 for the Ruby on Rails decal. And the topic of this lecture is to basically turn an idea into an application, which means just basically combining all the things we've learned to use Ruby on Rails to create any kind of application that you want. And this will be useful for your second project, which is basically where you and a group of team members will basically pick an idea and implement the application by the week before midweek. All right. First off, I just want to get a quick poll about how far people are in project 1, and just on the count of 3, just raise number of fingers which corresponds to about how far you are. Where 1 means first third, 2 means second third, 3 means pretty much almost done, and 4 means pretty much done. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I see a bunch of 1s, a few 2s, and maybe a 3 and a 4 out there. So it's okay. And just as a reminder, it's due not this Friday, but the Friday right before spring break. So you don't have to worry about this class while you're on vacation. All right, just to kind of go over what we've learned in the past 5 weeks is that we learned how to make static pages. We learned how to create models, which is a way to interact with the database. We knew how to make migrations, which is a way to change databases. We know how to make controllers, which allows us to handle requests given to our server. And we know how to create views, which are just templates of HTML that we show the user. And before I continue, I just want to do a little quick quiz question. Which of these routes will allow this form, which is the text up, this text right here, render in Pokemon/new.html.erb. And we'll assume in our controller that it says @Pokemon equals Pokemon.new. And in case you don't recognize simple form for, which is something we are going to use during today's lecture and something you should have seen if you done some of project 1, is that simple form for is pretty much the same as form for, except it has little extra features that make things easier. All right, so the 4 options are that will allow this to work are basically either a post to Pokemons, which will go to Pokemon's create, a get to Pokemon's new, a patch to Pokemon's create, or a post to Pokemon's new. All right, I just want you to think about it for a little bit. And when you kind of have when you think you have an idea of what the answer is, just raise up your fist, but don't show the number of fingers that or the number of fingers that corresponds to the answer. Just think about it. Okay, everybody just put up your fists. And on the count of 3, pick an answer. And if you don't know, just guess. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I see a lot of 2s, 3s. I see 4s. I see people switching fingers. So yeah, just talk about it with your neighbor for about a minute and see if you could come up with which one should be right. All right, can I get everybody's attention again? So same drill as before, just put up your fist and put the, on the count of 3, just put the number of fingers which corresponds to the answer that you and your partner may or may not have agreed on. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I see a bunch of 2s, some 3s, and some 4s. Okay, so the answer is 1. Did anyone who picked 1, can they tell me why? Or I guess I will, well, okay, then I guess I will say the reason why 1 is the one that works. So first of all, when this form, when you pass in information in this form needs to know where to send the data, right? Or send the data to create a certain Pokemon. So you have to give it a post endpoint, because a post endpoint is where you could give that endpoint data, and your Rails server should be able to create the data. The reason why 1, so basically now we have 1 and 4. The reason why we have 1 work and not 4 right now is due to the fact that when you create a form, when you do a simple form 4 and your form 4, that it'll make the assumption that the name of the path you want to post to is just the name of the model underscore path. So then when you do new underscore Pokemon, so the reason why 4 doesn't work is when you have new underscore Pokemon, it'll create the route new underscore Pokemon underscore path, but simple form 4 will make the assumption that you're going to post to the Pokemon's underscore path. And yeah, do you have questions about that? And I'll show you, and this will be used during the live lecture. So yeah, if you want to wait for that, that is totally fine too. And so routes and forms are other things we've learned before. Simple form 4, as I said earlier, is just a library that that we will use, and it's very simpler. It's very similar to the form 4, which is built into Rails, but simple form 4 will allow you to make assumptions, or this form will make assumptions about the type of inputs that you have. So for example, when we created a form 4 for our users, we had to tell explicitly, we had to tell the form explicitly what kind of form field we want. Like we want a text field, or if we wanted a number field. But what form 4 will do, or a simple form 4 will do, is look at the model, look at the type of the column, and then create the correct corresponding input type. And when you do simple form 4, what it does when assuming the routes is this right here. When you do a simple form 4 at Pokemon, it'll assume the URL you want to send it to is the Pokemon's path for that particular Pokemon, and the method you use is post. These are assumptions. This is an inference that simple form 4 makes that you will probably use just to make your life a little bit easier. And when you do resources Pokemons, you'll create that route, which is something we talked about, I believe, last lecture. I'm not sure. I want to say it's either last lecture or 2 lectures ago. All right. Continuing on, for the main part of this lecture, we're going to create an idea and then create an application from start to finish. This is going to be a 2-part lecture. We'll do one half this week. I'll probably stop around 5:20 and maybe release the code and have Warren do his optional HTML lecture for the second half. But we'll do basically this lecture split into 2 parts. And the name of our app is Quitter. And what our app's going to do is be a Twitter for quitters, or basically people on this application, I want them to announce to the world or all their friends that they want to quit something. For example, they could type out, I want to quit smoking, and they just put that up there and the world could see. The idea, people can post about anything that they're quitting, and admins moderate posts to make sure that they are appropriate. The second part is what we're going to do for the next week. This week, we're just going to be focusing on creating a basic structure where people could just simply post and update their posts. Okay, so what do we need to make this application? Or I have this basic idea that I want to implement. What do we need? What are the steps that I need to take? I need to think about the models I need. We have a user model which will have name, an email, a way to authenticate the user, and the user will own many quits, or if you want to think about it as tweets, they will own many tweets. And the quit model will have text that will talk about what the user is quitting, and it belongs to a user. And also, I posted these slides in case you wanted to follow on your own computer. They're on Piazza on the linked important posts. Okay, so the roadmap of what we're going to do. This is a vague roadmap. I'm going to talk about what my current plan steps of how to make this application. But if you want to ask any questions along the way about, or like change this roadmap to make the application in a different order, let me know and I can try and do that. Okay, first step, we're going to create these models, the users and post models. Our second step, we're going to make user authentication. Third step, validations and associations, which makes sure that that our users have, or our quits that we make are associated with the user and that they're not just empty quits. Step 4 is basically to create an index, new, show, and create for the quits that we make, or the quits that the user makes. And the 5th step is to edit and update the quits. And I forgot that 6th step, ignore that. Oh. Okay, so let's begin and pretend that this is a second project for the Rails Decal minus my team. Okay, so I have an idea. I want to create a new Rails application, and I'm going to do Rails new quitter. Bam. Creates all the test files, runs bundle install to install the dependencies. And I go into my project quitter. And next, I'm going to open my text editor within this just to have the whole project view. And now we could begin. One thing I said I wanted to do in this app is to allow users to sign up and sign in. If you haven't, and the way we're going to do that is using a gem called Devise. Devise basically is a library that a bunch of people work together in writing that does user signups, sign-ins, a system for getting passwords and all that stuff, so that I don't have to do that. And that's the nice thing about Rails, that people have very common features. People have already done a lot of the legwork for you. And it's just, all you have to do is just probably read some documentation, put that dependency in your gem file, and voila, you have that feature. And if you've worked on the project 1, Devise is how we do the signups for the Pokemon application. All right, let us start. So you could Google search the word Devise, and it'll give you this GitHub repository. And if you probably search for like use Rails authentication device will probably be the first library that shows up. And there's a bunch of information about it, of how you can get involved, how you can contribute. But the part I care about is, how do I use the application? So first step is add this to your gem file, gem devise. And the gem file is at the top level of my application that describes all my dependencies. And what I'm going to do is just paste gem devise. And what that will tell Rails is next time I run bundle installs, make sure that I have this dependency installed locally. And I'll run bundle install. And it'll install my dependencies. The reason why I didn't take any time is because I've installed devise before. It's on my local computer. It doesn't have to do much. And the instructions say after that once I install devise, I need to run this generator. So I'll just follow these instructions. Rails will generate devise install. Press enter, and what that'll do is create, use the library to create some local files on my computer. And also, a nice thing they also do is like give you some extra instructions right here, but I'm not going to read those. And next, to use devise and create a user that has a sign up, password, and everything to it, what devise tells me to do is run this command, Rails generate devise model. So I'm going to copy and paste that right into my command line. And I'm going to say the name of the model that I want to add devise to are users. So I'm going to do Rails generate devise user. And what it did for me was, the important part is it created a migration for me and the model user. So just to look at the model user, when I normally run a Rails G model user, it gives me an empty file and a migration. But when I use devise to do it, it gives me all these helper methods about devise, database, authenticable, registerable, recoverable, rememberable, trackable, and validatable. That's a lot. And for a basic application, I'm not concerned about what all this does because I'm going to make the assumption that devise will just do this is like just the basic configuration and I don't need to mess around with it too much. Another thing to look at right now is in db/migrate, that the migration they created for me is actually really large. That when I create a devise model, what it'll say is, I'll create a users table. It will give me an email field, an encrypted password field, reset password token, and all this information to remember when's the last time I signed in, or just store my password and all of that information. And what's really nice is that I didn't have to worry about any of this. All I did was add a dependency, run 2 command line codes, and now I have all this. So I'm going to run rake db migrates. And bam. I created a users table. And if you remember that the way to look at the current state of your database is go to schema.rb, which means, oh, I have a table of users, has emails, all the things I just said. Okay. One more thing to look at, rake routes. I have not defined a single route while I was up here. But what devise did for me, this library, after running its commands, is define all these routes for me. And they are basically ways to sign in, sign out, reset your password, edit your password, just register. All of this came through 1 line of code and 2 command line things that I typed in. And the reason, and what generated all these routes is that when you generate a devise model, that your route file will get updated. So config/routes.rb, it'll just say devise for users. I'm delete all this comment text just to clean it up. And that's the only line of code that is there. It's created all these paths. So what I'm going to do right now is show you the current state of my application. All right, run Rails server. I start my server. I go to localhost 3000, and here's the basic Ruby page. And if I look at my rake routes, I know that I have a /user/signin page right here. So I'm going to just actually copy that pattern /user/signin, and bam, I already have a sign-in form already all made for me because I use this library. Did not have to do much work for this. And I type in some boring information. I'll attempt to log in. There's automatically a check to see that it's not a valid Rails. I mean, in email format, when I attempt to log in, it fails because there are no users. Lucky for me, the form that's automatically generated by Devise gives me a sign-up page. And click on it. I go to user/signup. I could say, I have an email, howard@chen.com. My password is password. My other password confirmation is password. And I could sign up, and bam, I'm back to the application. You can't see that I'm signed in right now, but I'm going to let you know. I promise you that currently howard@chen.com is signed into the application. So right now, with how little code I actually wrote, I've created a whole sign up and sign in system and a way to keep track of who's logged in. Do you have any questions so far? Okay. So sign up, sign in. It's a very common feature that is kind of involved, but with this library, I've just kind of said, okay, I don't need to really deal with that much about it. I could focus on the main parts of my app that kind of differentiate it. So next thing I said that was in my roadmap was to create a model called like post. And that post has two things. One, a text talking about what thing a user is quitting, and two, a way to kind of reference the user. So I'm going to do Rails G model again, just to generate a model. And this time, I'm going to create a post model. And that post will have a title, and I'll just say it's a string. And it will belong to a user. So the way we did it before was we created a column called user_ID, which was an integer. And another way to do that same feature is type in user, which is the name of the referred model, and type in references. This is just a shortcut in Rails that'll do the same thing. And I'll just show you the output of the file that's generated from this. So user:references. I created a migration and a model. And looking at the model post, when I put references in the generator, it'll create this belongs to automatically for me instead of me typing it, which is one of the nice things it does. And when you look at the new migration file, it'll run this method called references. And what it'll do is create user_ID for me and put an index on it, which means that it'll be faster to retrieve a post by the user's ID. Do you have any questions for that so far? Yes?
I'm not sure why it's different for you, but like when I did the same thing, I just got a foreign key :true in the references itself, and yours just says add foreign key post users.
So there is a possibility that that one of our gem files that does this generation, it has different version numbers, so they just might do slightly different things. So I'm gonna assume that is the reason why. Like one example that isn't this, but that happens with me and some other people is bundler, the gem that kind of installs all your dependencies. Some bundler versions will append bundled with bundler version, whatever, at the end of the file, and some won't. And because of that, when I work with different bundler versions, because that's not specified by our gem file, that we always get merge. We get merge conflicts sometimes because I don't generate that last part, but the other people on my team do. But so it's probably because of different gem versions. Any more questions? All right. I'll continue by rate db migrate. Okay, so far I have not created any views, but just to check that my things are working, or they're mostly working, I just want to make sure if I call user.new, it doesn't error out, that I could connect to a users table. And when I call post.new, same thing, and it has all the columns I care about. It has its own ID, it has a title, and also has a user ID. Okay. Next, I'm going to think about what my home page is going to be like. Like when someone goes to my application, what do I want them to see? Assuming that they're logged in, I'm going to say that I want them to see all the quits that anyone has ever written. So how do I do that? I have to make a view and a controller. When the controller has to show an index of all my quits, and 2, the view should render it in a somewhat nice looking format. So do that RailsG controller, which generates a controller for me. I'm gonna say it's gonna be a quits controller. And remember that controllers are pluralized. So RailsG controller quits. And yeah, this will just automatically create the controller for me. And I'll open up in app/controller/quits controller. And what we'll define here is an index method. And in that index, I know I'm going to show in the view all the quits in my database. So I'll just do @quits equals quit.all, which quit.all queries for all the quits in my database. Another thing to note is that when I did the Rails generator for the controller, it created a folder within my views to scope all my actions in. So I have to create a corresponding view with the index, and I'll do index.html.erb because it automatically matches the name. And then I'll just put here in the h1 tag, all quits /h1. And I'll write a for loop. Because I define @quits in my controller, I have access to it in the view, then I can do @quits.each do quit. Close it off with an end. And in each tag, I'll say, put a p tag, a closing p tag, and within the p tag, I'll just do we're gonna quit. Oh, this has to be embedded Ruby since I'm accessing an attribute in my model. And what I'll do is do quit.title. Is that what I called it? Let's see. Let's find out. And in case you ever need to reference what the columns are and the tables are in your database, you can always go to schema.rb, which is found in your DB folder. So it's apps. No, it's not even app. It's the top level of your Rails application /db/schema.rb. In my post, it has a string called title. So I'm just going to, for every quit, I'm just going to post the title in a p tag. And I've created the controller for my quit. I've created the view for my quit. What else do I need to do? I heard it over there, routes, which I need to create a route for. And since I want it to be my home page, I will, well, instead of fast searching, routes is in config/routes. And I'll just say root move controller, which is quits hash, and then hashtag name of action, which is index. And when I refresh, controller quits. Oh, crap. Okay, did it screw up. The name, the model I used was not quits. I called them posts. So it's gonna be a post controller, and which means I have to rename the file. And I actually did this, but it's a good thing I went over it, is that when you have to, if you mess up on a name and you want to rename something, you will have to rename a lot of things to match the, to allow inference to happen. I want to just do a mass rename right now and switch that to post, which is post.all. In the controller, I'm going to rename the controller to the posts controller. Rename within the views. Go to my views, rename the outer directory to post. And within this, posts, for each post in post, I'll do post.title and make sure, okay. And refresh, nobody there. Each for nil class at quits. What did I do wrong? Oh, I'll delete this. And in my routes, root post index, restart my server, and hopefully, why does it do that? Post/index. Okay, I'm going to just clear out all my files. Oh, I forgot to save. That's why. Save. And that's not it. Okay. While I'm debugging this, at posts, does anyone have any questions while I'm trying to figure out what I did wrong at index? Okay, it apparently didn't save. Posts. Post. Post. And okay. Now it works. And the reason why it's empty is because I haven't created any posts yet. But do you have any questions before we continue? Yeah. Why did I have to rename everything? Okay. It didn't work. And wait, why didn't it work? Oh, I actually forgot what exact. Do you remember what exact error I got? It said, or?
I think it's because your name, it's called the controller model of the post, but you called it with. But the controller model can't control. But in the index, you did at width equals width on all of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. Thank you. So before a post.all, I did quit.all, right? And that's when I realized I misnamed it, because our model right here is called post, which defines the class post. So I was trying to back then I was trying to access quit.all, which doesn't exist. And that's why I had the model undefined. Then I renamed everything just to have a consistent naming convention in my code. I could have simply just renamed the post file. Oh, no. There's actually, it's a little more involved. If I had renamed the post file would have made the if I rename the post file to quits, right, I would have to, what would happen is that the model is now called quit, and what it'll assume is that there's a database table called quits. But when I made the migration, I created a table called posts. So it would error out unless I specifically told that model that the name of its corresponding table in the database is different from the name of the model.
Can't you just call DB migrate again?
Yes, I could also create a migration to rename the table. That also works, and that probably would have been a lot better. Yeah. Okay, any questions before I continue on after that renaming fiasco? All right, so next thing I want to do is create, just have the ability, so right now we list all the posts, right? I want the user to have the ability to create a post. And to create the post, I want two controller endpoints. One is new, which gets us a form to create a post and get us and create, which is an endpoint to send the data where our Rails server will save all the information. So define at new, I'll just create an empty post, which equals post.new, and define create. And this should be very similar code to what was done before and what was done in your homework, where when I create, when I have an endpoint that saves information or updates information in the database, I have to make sure that I sanitize the endpoint. So I have to define post params, which basically looks in my params hash, make sure I have the key called post, and within those keys have the keys, or within that, when I look up that key, the value will be a hash map and permit only these key value pairs, which are, and since I only care about one thing, which is the title, say permit title. When I do create, I'll pass in these parameters to the new method. And so our post will currently have a title that was given to it from the request. Now, here's something I want to always make sure. And that is that our post has a user associated with it, and that the titles aren't empty. So if we remember from, I believe, week 3, what we could do to model is type in a validates, and a validates will make sure that I could specify a column and put validations on it. So I'm going to make sure that my title column pass in the symbol title, or whatever the name of the column is. I could pass in presence :true, which means that don't save this post unless there is something in the title. So it can't be nil, and it can't be a bunch of white spaces. A second validation I'm going to put, which is similar, is validates user presence. So if we remember that user is a relation on the post, and what I'm going to say is that that our user, that I'm going to say that the post must have a user before it can be saved. Do you have any questions about that so far? Yeah. Oh, do I know how to spell presence? Is it with the C? I'm terrible at spelling. It would have come up later. Okay. So it has a C. No, it's totally fine. I'm terrible at spelling. And that, yeah, thank you for catching that before I embarrass myself later. Okay, so we put these validations on it. And just to kind of test it, I could open up my console right now and say p equals post.new. I call p.save. It gives me false, which means that my post failed to save. And what I could do is call post.errors, which gives me a list of all its errors. And the messages from the errors, I could just do post p.errors.messages, which is going to be a list of errors that my post has. It'll say that the title can't be blank and the user can't be blank. Okay, so I know that these are two validations my post is failing. But when I make the request, I'll make sure it's there. Okay, in my create method, to get to this point, it means I must have received a request to create a post. And what I've allowed, what I've done is make sure that I grab the title. So my post has a title. And assuming that the user didn't send me a blank post, I've passed one of the requirements. But here's another requirement, that my post must have a user. Who should the user always be every time you're in the middle of a request? Exactly, whoever is logged in. So the next question becomes, how do you tell who is logged in? And the answer to that is, with Devise, Devise gives you access to methods or helper methods about who's logged in, because Devise is a whole thing about authenticating that a user, that it provides a bunch of helpers. And what they say is that to get the current signed in user, I have a method called current user that I could just type in and I have access to the user that's signed in. So what I can do right now is, after creating the post title, I could say @post.user equals the current _ user. And I know this method exists as long as I properly imported Devise. Then I could just do @post.save, or yeah, I could just do @post.save and then redirect to the action index. So after I'm done, I'm just going back to my main page. And let's see this in action. Here's my Quitter app. Oh, I created a controller, but what did I forget to create? The two things I actually forgot to do. I got too excited about finishing the controller, or hopefully finishing the controller. Yes, one of them is the view. So to create a corresponding view, I just go to my views folder /quits, or yeah, it should be /post, sorry. I need to delete this so this doesn't get in the way. Okay, so my view /post, create a new file called new.html.erb. And I'm just going to give it a nice little header called create new post. Close the header. And next, I want to create a form. The library I talked about during our slides was simple form for, and what I said was, the nice thing about it, instead of telling the form for to specify a text field or a number field or anything like that, what form for will allow me to do, or simple form for, what it will allow me to do is just type like the form.input, and it will guess what type of input it is. So how do I get this library? Normally I would just Google form for, but I have it open right here. Simple form. I just have to add it to my gem file. Gem file. I go to right under Devise. I'm just going to add simple form for. And I'm going to close my Rails server. And something that you should always do every time you change your gem file and run bundle install is to restart your server. So I have these dependencies installed. And now it tells me to make sure it works. I'm just going to Rails generate simple form for install. And I'm going to use Bootstrap later. So I'm just going to add this extra command they tell me to use if I'm using Bootstrap. So I create my simple form. So I've installed simple form 4. Now, theoretically, I should be able to access it in my new.html.erb and do this. Embedded Ruby and type in simple underscore form underscore 4 at post. Do P or do F. F is just what I personally use for forms. Just because I saw it in like a tutorial like 2 years ago. I just never got out of the habit. So F got input. Input says create an input field. Pass it the name of the input field, and since I want it to be the post title, let's call it title. And finally, I want to do also is make a submit button. So f.submit, close it off. And I've created the view. I've created the controller. What else do I need to do? I need to make the route. Yes, sorry, I said it at the same time. I need to make the route. And if you remember from, I want to say it was last lecture, an easy way to define routes for a model is just do resources and the name of the resource, which are post. And since I only want to expose 2 routes right now, I'm going to say only and pass in the array of endpoints that I want it to show, which is new and create. Save that. Go to my application, make sure I restart my server with Rails S. And refresh. And it goes to my all posts for home. But I want to access the new form. And if I do rake routes, I'll find what resources created for it. And it says if I go to /post/new, it'll go to my post hashtag new. So that is the URL I'm going to. Localhost 2000 /post/new. And create new post does not have my form. And why is that? It is due to the fact that when creating a form, I need an equal sign to put the output of the form here, which I forgot. And bam, here is a really crappy form, but it has all the information I need. And if I just create an empty post, I go to all posts, but I don't see anything. Why is that? I hear things, but could you speak up or? Exactly. I didn't input a title, so I failed the validations. So going back, what I'm going to do instead is put in a title. I quit smoking because it's bad for my lungs. And then it successfully creates the smoking post. And this is a lot of things we've learned before, except combined with 2 libraries, which is devise and simple form 4. Do you have any questions so far? Yeah. Yes, currently I'm signed in right now. So normally I was going to do something else, but what I guess a good thing to do right now is create the part of my application that allows me to sign in and sign out. And maybe just make my application look better. Okay. This is going to be a little bit of a tangent, but hopefully it'll be very interesting. That first of all, let's say I don't know anything about HTML, CSS, design, whatever. I'm going to use a library. I'm going to use Bootstrap because I feel like I don't need to know that much. All I have to do is click Getting Started and copy these links right here. Okay, so normally when you create, when you just do static HTML, you create an HTML file, you put a head, and you type in the head references where you could pull CSS, JavaScript for you to use on the page. But in this class, I don't think I've ever shown you or ever shown me defining a head on any of the HTML. And the reason why that is that the head is defined in a special folder called layouts. If you looked in your views, you always saw a layouts folder, right? But you've never actually messed around with it. And within the layouts folder, there's an application.html.erb. Up here is where you define the head. So you get the HTML tag, the head tag, the name of the application, some basic style sheets and JavaScripts. And here's your body. And in this body, there's a method called yield. And that is what, and when you see a yield, what that means is delegate this to another file. And that other file is usually like, if you're going to the index view, it's delegating to the index.html.erb, and that's what's rendered. But if I were to edit anything in this file, it'll show up on every page. For example, if I just put hi here, my Twitter app, I should refresh. Hi should be on the all post page. Also should be on not user/new, post/new. Post/new, hi is up there. So since I want to use Bootstrap, and Bootstrap just gave me a bunch of references to use to load all of Bootstrap, I could just copy that in there, save it. And now all the Bootstrap style sheets and the JavaScript files are going to be loaded in all the JavaScript files are going to be loaded every time I load the page. So in theory, I'm going to also take out the hi because I don't want that. So in theory, that if I go back to localhost 3000, the text changed, and that's because this is Bootstrap's default font. So I've suddenly made my app look better by just copying and pasting stuff. Yes? For all of the Bootstrap stuff. So if you go to getbootstrap.com, all I did was go to getting started, and here all I hit was the copy button, copy it to my clipboard, and put it into my application. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is create a nav bar, which is this little component up here. You've seen in a bunch of apps. So because I don't know anything about front end, I'm just going to steal it. I'll go to the default nav bar they give me, look at all this juicy stuff, copy it. And since I know I want my nav bar on every page, I'm just going to put it in the body on top of what it yields to and just copy it. And next thing you know, if I refresh my app, I now have a nav bar. Okay. Oh. I'm a that I kind of want to get rid of. So I have this href, blah, 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 drop down. Okay, I'm not going to use a drop down menu ever. So pull this out. Let's leave a link. If I refresh it, only my link should appear. And now here's the system that I'm going to use. If I'm logged in, then I will, if I'm logged in, I will just put my user's email on top and a log out button. But if I'm logged out, then I'll just put a sign in and sign up button, just so we could that anyone using the app could easily identify if they're logged in or not. So first thing to do is just put the users. Okay, how do I check to see if the user's logged in? If you remember, I actually had a helper method called current user. And what I could do is put some embedded Ruby in here. If current underscore user, I'll just keep it simple for now, and then say end. I'll just put it somewhere in here, logged in. And refresh, and now I have this text that says I'm logged in. But I think that looks terrible. So what I'm going to now do instead is say that if the current user is logged in, I'm going to create something that just looks like the link button we had earlier. But instead, I'm going to copy and paste it right here. So if the user signed in, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to output the user's name. And I have access to the current user's name the current user's email. By accessing current user, which is given to me by device, I can access current user in the view and just put current user.email. And make sure I have an equal sign to make sure it renders, so that when I'm logged in, I now have howard@chen.com, which is my email that I signed up with. So another thing I want to do is give myself a logout button, which I'm going to convert this link into. I'll say that if I'm logged in, I'll create a logout button. I know it's a list item. Like, the only reason I'm copying these list item tags is to just have nice styling that's given. But this logout button will be a link. So I'll use my embedded Ruby to create a link to. And the text on that link will be to log out. And next, I have to give it a path or a URL to hit to log me out. And if I remember that devise gave me a bunch of routes, one of them was to allow the user to log out. So I just have to find it here. And it's /user/signout, which is a delete request called destroy user session. So I could just copy and paste destroy user underscore session here, append path to it, and now save. When I refresh, my second button is now log out. And when I hit log out, let's see. Oh, I forgot one important thing. Logout was a delete request. Link tos are automatically get. I'll have to pass in method : delete. Save. Go back. That request again, and bam. I'm currently logged out, so that since there's no current user, nothing shows up on the right. What are your questions about that? Or yes.
I'm curious, the current user is not. So what happens if you close the tab and open it again? Is it persistent? Like, is that current user cookie, or is it?
I'm like 90%, 99% sure it's based on your cookie. And we could test it out. I'll make the login functionality, and we'll log back into howard@chen.com, and then yeah, and then I'll just open a new tab. So the other part is pretty chill. All I have to do is put an else case. Basically, if no one's signed in, current user is nil, which evaluates false. So if no one's logged in, I will again create a link to, instead of log out, I'm going to create login. Take a quick look at my routes. I know it's new user session path, so I could just replace the first word here to new, and since I know that it's a form, it's a GET request, which is defaulted, so I could just remove this extra option. Refresh, I have a login, and I could do the same for sign up, where I could just create another link, sign up, and look at my rake routes again, and our sign up is new user registration. So I just do new user registration path, refresh, and now I have a login, which takes me to the login thing, and sign up, which takes me to sign up. And lucky for me, Devise creates, when they create these automatic forms, they give me a link, an easy link to switch between the two. And since I already have an account, I could just do login and say howard@chen.com. My password, I'll hit remember me, log in. And I don't want this to save my password. But here's howard@chen.com. If I open a new tab and go to localhost 3000, I'm still logged in. Yes.
Go back to
Yes, the code. Okay.
Does current user come from the device package, or did you define it?
Current user comes from Devise. Yeah, Devise automatically gives me current user because they are very friendly. So a thing I want to note is that I don't want anyone, like in the normal usage of the app, I can't even create a post that doesn't have a user associated with it. So, and I don't want anyone that isn't like a part of my Quitter community to access Quitter. What can I do? Another nice thing Devise defines that it gives me is something called this before action authenticate user. It will basically, before any action is run, basically before index new create is run, it will make sure that a user is logged in. And in these little instructions, it tells me just to put this in my controller and it should automatically work. I go to my controller, my post controller, go to the top and say before action, authenticate my user. So what does this mean? It means that if I log out right now, and I attempt to go to /posts/new, it'll just force me back to the sign in because that's what authenticate user does. That if I attempt to access anything on this controller, it'll just send me, and if I'm not logged in, it'll send me back to login. And since unfortunately I did my index like this, if I go localhost 3000, since my root goes to my post controller's index, it'll automatically also be rerouted to this sign-in page. But fortunately, since I already have an account, just do howard@chen.com passwords, and I have full access to this. Okay. What else? So like what I said was I also wanted to create a show view and ability to edit and update posts. So I'm gonna, since I'm kind of running out of time, I'm going to kind of breeze through this, but please, if you have any questions, stop me. If you remember, the way we usually do show is by handing in the URL of parameter that's an ID. So I'm going to say @post equals post.find by params, which accesses our params hash, get the ID. And in our routes, I'm going to make sure I allow a show path right here. And finally, or two things I want to do. First, create a show.html.erb, which will have a header /h1 that will be just the name of the post. So @post.title, and make sure I have an equal sign so it actually shows up. And maybe in a h2 tag, I will access the @post user, because @post belongs to user. I could access that user by calling .user on it because of my belongs to that I put in the file @post.user.email. And hopefully all that will show up if I do a show. Next, I could just do this through the URL, but to make my app nice to the people using it, I'll just make sure that I get a link to a link on the index view for this. So every time I generate a post, what I wanted to do is actually let it be a link to, and make the text in the link is going to be the post title, and now I have to give it a URL. And what I can do is do rake routes, which generate all of this, and I have a get request to access the post controller show method by just doing post_path. So I could just do post_path, but it needs to know a specific ID. So all I have to do is actually just pass it a post, and it will access the post ID column and give me the correct post. So ideally, if I refresh, this turns into a link, and when I go here, this is the show view for it. Do you have any questions about that? Okay. Next, I have my new create. I want the ability to edit my post. Edit. When I edit the post, I want to know what specific post I'm editing. So I get that also from params. Do that so that when I edit a post, I have all the information about it. And I'm going to define update, which when I completely finish editing my form and I submit all the data, this endpoint will make sure that my post is updated. So we'll do the same thing, find the correct post, post.update, post_params, which is something we've seen before. Update will take in a hash map and update the attributes and save it. What I'm going to redirect it to is I'm just going to render the show. Okay, because that means after I finish updating it, that I'll just go to the show view for it. And in my routes file, to allow these paths, since I pretty much have all the, I don't have a delete path, so I'm just going to put in edit and update, append that there. It's two symbols. One more, after editing the routes file, I've created new routes, so I'm going to do rake routes to look at them. And now I have the edit post path right here. And to access it, I will just do edit_post_path. And I'm going to create a link on my show view that will say link_to edit this, and give it the path edit post path, and pass it in the current post I'm looking at. And it'll make an inference on it, look at its ID, and give you the correct post. Yeah, so a refresh. One thing I have yet to do is create the view for editing it. I'm going to just copy and paste the new because my edit is simply a form. And so I'm just making a duplicate, but instead of saying create new post, I'm going to say edit existing post. And if you remember, since in my edit method, I found a post in my database, my post.title is filled out. So if I did this properly, that when I go to the edit form, it should pre-populate with the previous title. And refresh again just to make sure. I hit this, edit this, and now I'm into editing the post. And I say smoking, let's say JK, I really like smoking, but I'm gonna quit drinking now. I could just hit update post, and now I'm quitting drinking. Sorry if I just blazed through the last half. It should have been things you've already seen, and hopefully it's kind of ringing a bell. But I was just kind of running out of the promised time that I said I would to do this part. Do you have any questions? Comments? Anything you want me to go over again? Yeah.
Yeah, where do you find the HTML for like the automatically generated logout and login pages to like sort of make that look better?
Okay, so what you have, so basically the devise library has this kind of stored away from you, just in case you don't want to mess with that, right? But yes, let's say they look terrible, and you want to, like, let's say you want to add more things to the page, like more buttons or anything like that, right? So if you remember from the first lecture, we have this idea of convention over configuration, where if you just do the defaults, everything will be really easy. But Rails will always allow you the ability to configure things, even though. So if you look through this devise thing, all this documentation, you'll eventually get to the point where you could not configuring models, configuring views. So there's a section in documentation that says if you want to locally generate your views, which means take them out of the library and just put them on your local repository, you could just run Rails generate devise views and start editing the views. What will happen is in your /views thing, you'll have like /devise, and then all the corresponding views. And once you edit those, they'll reflect on your application. Any more of your questions? All right. Okay. So right now, I do have an application that I should make this go to the home. So totally another thing I just wanted to add, if you go to your application.html.erb, and if you remember that's in your /views/layouts, is that instead of making this, I'm just going to change the href to /. So when I say refresh this, oh, I don't want to resubmit this form. Okay, I'm going to resubmit this form. It's okay. But if I hit quitter, it'll just go to the home. That's just some random piece of information. But now I have an application where I could see a bunch of posts. I could sign up, or I could log out and sign up as someone else and be like, Brandon@chen.com. Password is also password. Password, also password. And there are a bunch. I should have definitely made a link to go to post/new, but and just a quick way to do that is create a link to on the index view, put a text, and just look for the new post, append_path, and you create that link. Assuming that link existed and you clicked on here, I could just say, Brandon's trying to quit video games. I create the post, and now I have two posts. One, which is created by Brandon, who is me right now, and one that's created by Howard. Okay. Now, this was supposed to be a slide that after we got through a lot, but I didn't actually really start coding until about an hour ago. And an hour in, this is what I have. I have the ability to log in, sign up, log out. My website doesn't look, it doesn't look in any capacity good, but it's better than like straight up plain text. And you could create posts, and these posts are associated with a user. You could see more detailed information about posts, and you can see all the posts. And that the ability to create posts is signed into create posts, and you can't have empty posts. Rails allowed me to do that in in about an hour with me explaining things along the way, which is really cool. I have a follow-up question. So what is the major security flaws in this application right now? A, that the users can edit each other's quits. B, users can delete each other's quits. A non-user of the site can transfer quits from one user to another, and a non-user of the site can create quits for himself. Okay, just want you to think about this for a little bit. Same drill. 1 corresponds if you think the answer is number 1. 4 corresponds to if you think the answer is 4. Can I have everybody please raise up their hands? And just on the count of 3, just put up how many fingers you think it is. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I see a bunch of 1s, 3s, 2s. Okay, it's all over the place, but that's good. Since I'm kind of running out of time, or I'm going over what I said I would, I'll just give you the answer. And the answer is A only. I'll explain why the other ones don't work. Or basically why B, C, and D don't work. B, I didn't create any delete functionality, so there's no way to delete your quits. C, a non-user of the site can transfer quits from one user to the other. There's no way on my site right now to edit the user. It's only editing the title. And a non-user, and D, a non-user of the site can create quits for himself. If you remember that if I log out, I don't have access to quit/new. I mean, host/new, sorry. It'll just redirect me here. Okay, and what the problem is there's no authorization. Or I didn't even talk about A, sorry. So the thing is, even though I'm logged in as howard@chen.com, and I do password, enter, I go to Quitter, and I look at video games, which is Brandon's post, I can edit Brandon and say hi. And now Brandon is just quitting hi, which doesn't make any sense. But the bigger concern is I'm able to edit Brandon's post, which shouldn't happen. And the problem is that I shouldn't be authorized to do this, but I have not created any authorization on my application, which is what I'm going to cover next week. And what authorization does is limits the ability of users to do things. And we'll create admins next week. Do you have any questions before I go over just some logistical things? Okay, logistics. Project 1 is due next Friday at 11:59. So just right before you go off and party for spring break, finish the project so you can pass this class, hopefully. And project 2, the spec will be out next week, but I don't expect anyone to start it or anything like that. But the thing you should do as soon as possible is to find a group of 3 to 4 people to work with. You don't even have to brainstorm the idea right now, but just find a group of 3 to 4, maybe like right after class or as soon as possible. We'll create a form for you to sign up with your groups and your idea. And yeah, so just be watching out for that. And that's the end of my lecture. Just chill for a little bit. I'll put up the check-in code and stay if you want the optional HTML lecture. Thank you.